So I would like to change things up slightly here and go for some quick fire questions where we say if it's a myth or a truth. Well, you say if it's a. I'll say it. You're the expert, so you tell me what you think. So, myth or truth? Recycling is the only way to deal with waste.
That is a definite myth, and it's without getting again to sort of the different areas of solutions. What I mentioned at the very start was this thing called the waste hierarchy. And directly above that system, at the very top, is something called waste prevention. And underneath that's reuse, which is much more conventional. That's where you can take, an old piece of furniture and give it life in another home. And then under that, you're recycling. The really exciting one that's around the corner is this quite sort of nascent concept is waste prevention, which in a perfect world, the waste never exists. And it's up to there's a lot of people, a lot smarter people than me trying to work out ways to track that, to monitor that and give it a value. Because conventionally, recycling is the go-to target because you can say,
yes, yeah,
as a figure.
So what would be an example of waste prevention then?
So waste prevention would be, for example, you take, again, just to take furniture, it could be that it's created and you've built a new office block. You know how much that material is going to need, how many sort of seating or whatever range it might be. You know, X amount of chairs are going to be there. An ideal thing, you know that the end of life of that office turmoil might be 10 years, but you already know that you're just going to transit that building across and all the material just to another area within that. So then its purpose and everything else continues exactly the same. Ownership might change within that time, but nothing happens. There's nothing leaving that system. So that's sort of the ideal in that situation.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's an interesting concept. The waste hierarchy with the prevention at the top and other steps on the bottom. That's an interesting concept as well. Customers are starting to care more about how their businesses handle waste. Do you think that's a myth or that's a truth?
They are definitely truth. Considering much more about how the waste is handled, because ultimately it comes back to them in terms of some of the tools that are in place, such as extended producer responsibility for what they produce, and that includes not just the goods but also the elements around the packaging that go with it. So, no, they are very much looking at that because it's ultimately within their interest as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Sustainability is just a buzzword and it doesn't really help businesses.
I'm biased, but I think that's pretty sure that's a myth, and I can understand. And this is the thing which I got to emphasize, because where we come at it, and myself and say the consulting side, we have to understand what the challenges of who the user is, and I can understand that, say, elements around sustainability and, as we mentioned, some complexities, not always the case, might pose some sort of not as much benefits as might be perceived. Ultimately, as I say, it has a lot of benefits, and ultimately you can grow within that system as well. So yeah, I think that's a bit of a myth.
Okay, fair enough. That was a bit of a more extreme controversial one that we threw out there. But I'm interested on your belief on your thoughts on this one. Switching, and this is thinking about more in businesses and organizations, switching to better waste management practices always disrupts operations.
Ooh. I think, well, there you go. This is a fair one. So I feel, I'd argue, and I'm going to explain it without going too long in too much depth. I'll probably say truth, but with a caveat there, in that, yes, there is disruption, but that's the purpose, and it can be a positive disruption in that you're modifying systems to be improved. If you have a waste system in place and you don't disrupt it, you're essentially not changing it.
Then yes. I guess the inference in that one, which maybe wasn't totally clear, was disrupt operations in a negative way. So make operations like less efficient, I suppose, maybe because of the additional steps from the waste management. I suppose that's the inference in that question.
No, and that's completely fair. And I think in that case, I'd say there's a less of a disruption element and more ultimately just essentially a improvement in efficiencies and systems, which is how all industry works over time. We look at ways that things have become more automated, the recent use of AI, better for or for worse, and how these things evolve naturally. And this is simply part of that. And what we're determined to use and what we're trying to do as a sort of broad sector is to turn that around so that it's ultimately to get the most of that, which serves all these purposes that I've mentioned.
Okay, thank you. Every factory creates waste, some kind of waste that can't be reused.
Oh, that's a myth. No, that is definitely a myth there because I've seen it in lots of different sectors where there, and I think this is the other side of the coin where all sectors and manufacturers aren't unfortunately created equal in terms of the challenges they may face due to the materials that they may use. Historically speaking, batteries now, it's a really big area, especially cars and everything else. Go back a few decades, your car battery, which is a lead acid battery, historically speaking, was the most recycled metal lead in the world because it was a contained system. It was a hazardous material, so it was very well monitored and controlled. So it had that head start, and metals and glass and other sectors have the ability to get around some of these challenges a bit more. So unfortunately, I think some face greater challenges than others.
How about this? Only big companies can make a difference in reducing waste.
Absolute myth. Yeah. So, and again, it's often a grassroots approach. I've had colleagues around the world and lots of different countries where we supported growth where they don't have the resources for large schemes, and it's schemes that could be rolled out using mobile phones and collections and all sorts of things that could be done on a very small micro action scale, really, but they add up as well, which is the amazing thing around it.
Whose responsibility is it, do you think, to lead initiatives like that? And, what's the best way to get initiatives like that, rolled out?
With that, I'm afraid it's on everyone's shoulders, which is, unfortunately, if we could just point to one person, that's the champion. And there's a few of us as well out there who are very much pushing for it as well. But ultimately, it's down to all of us and everything. And it's not necessarily, again, I can't emphasize, it shouldn't be perceived as, say, a challenge or, just any form of disruption. It's allowing opportunity to be there as well. But again, it's completely specific to that person and where they are. So a person on my side, we can talk to policymakers, we can inform in terms of treatment and options that are out there. But even just day-to-day public users, once there's sources that they can use, they can research to say, I have these batteries, where can I take them to? Or right at the top, I've got a car manufacturer and I have these byproducts. Who can I talk to get the value back? It applies to everyone.